3 years ago, my toxic family, led by my sister, drove me out after she stole my life savings. Now, I'm a tech CEO. My sister tried to publicly expose me as a fraud at my grandmother's birthday party. But I was prepared, and the truth I revealed shattered her entire world. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday, thick and creamy, an anomaly in my sterile, glass-walled office. My assistant, Chloe, had placed it on my desk as if it were a biohazard, separating it from the stack of venture capital proposals and server upgrade contracts. It was handwritten, the elegant, shaky cursive instantly recognizable. Grandma Iris. My stomach, already uneasy from a skipped lunch and too much coffee, did a slow, painful roll. I hadn't seen her, or any of them, in 3 years. 3 years, 2 months, and 11 days to be precise. In my world, the world of data security, precision mattered. In my old life, it was the only thing that kept me sane. I slit the envelope with a steel letter opener, a gift from my board of directors. Rebecca, the invitation read, "My dearest granddaughter, please come, it's my 85th. I just want to see you. With love, Iris." A simple request, a devastating one. For 3 years, I had built a fortress around myself. My company, Aegis Security, was my shield. My code was my armor. My team was my new, chosen family. We protected data, we anticipated threats, we built digital walls so high no one could climb them. It was a fortress built from the ashes of my old life. A life where my own sister, Megan, had been the Trojan horse. I leaned back in my ergonomic chair, the skyline of the city sprawling out before me. I was Rebecca, the 32-year-old CEO, the woman featured in Tech Forward magazine last month. I was a success. I was stable, respected, and on most days, truly happy. But the Rebecca who held that invitation was a different person. She was the 29-year-old scapegoat, the family ATM, the dreamer whose ambitions were everyone's favorite dinner table joke. The phone on my desk buzzed, a text from my lead developer. "Project Sentinel is green, we're a go. A multi-million-dollar contract just locked in. I should have been elated. Instead, I stared at my grandmother's handwriting. Please come." The last time I'd seen my family was in our cramped living room. The air had been thick with the smell of stale pot roast and my mother's disapproval. I had just discovered the $15,000 was gone, my seed money. The money I had saved for 2 years, working a dead-end office job by day and coding by night. Every penny gone from my savings account. And Megan, my older sister, the golden child, sat on the sofa, filing her nails, and said, "It was a bad investment, Becca. Get over it." Get over it. My parents, Robert and Cynthia, had flanked her. "She needed it," my father muttered, not looking at me. He was in trouble. "It's just money," my mother added, her voice sharp. "You're always so dramatic." Megan was in a bind. I had looked at the 3 of them, this tribunal of my own blood, and the betrayal was a physical thing. It wasn't just the theft, it was the ease of it. The complete, unanimous agreement that my future was disposable and Megan's bad investment. A deadbeat boyfriend's debt was the priority. I hadn't shouted. I hadn't cried. I had simply gone to my room, packed a duffel bag with my laptop and 3 days' worth of clothes, and walked out the front door. I left behind my furniture, my childhood photos, and the suffocating weight of their toxicity. I never went back. Now this invitation, a party, a reunion, I knew, with the chilling certainty of a systems analyst finding a backdoor vulnerability, that this wasn't just a party. It was a summons, and if I went, I wouldn't be walking into a celebration. I'd be walking into an ambush. My thumb hovered over my phone. I could text my grandmother, send an expensive, impersonal gift, and plead work. It would be the smart move, the secure move. But as I looked at her name, Iris, another, colder thought surfaced. For 3 years, they had controlled the narrative. In their small town, I was the ungrateful daughter, the cold-hearted sister who abandoned her family over a little money. Megan, I was sure, was the victim. I'd spent 3 years building shields. Maybe it was time to see just how strong they were. I picked up the phone, but I didn't text my grandmother. I called my lawyer. Then, I opened the secure, encrypted drive on my personal server, the one labeled contingency. I hadn't looked inside it for 3 years, but I had forgotten nothing. The betrayal, I realized, wasn't just the diagnosis of their toxicity, it was the evidence of it. My yes to Grandma Iris was a simple, short phone call. She cried, I promised, and we both pretended the chasm of 3 years didn't exist between our words. The moment I hung up, my other line buzzed. My office intercom. Rebecca, Chloe's voice was hesitant. It's your mother. I closed my eyes, of course. The scout, sent in to survey the terrain. Put her through, Chloe. A click, and then the voice that still held the power to make my shoulders tense. Rebecca, is that really you? Hello, Mother. My voice was even professional, the same voice I used for hostile negotiations. Well, your grandmother said you're coming. We were all so surprised. After all this time, we just assumed you were too busy for us. The guilt trip was immediate, a practiced, reflexive jab. I'm coming to see Grandma for her birthday, I said, keeping my tone flat. That's all. Oh, Rebecca, don't be like that, she sighed, a long-suffering sound I knew well. Your sister is so excited. Megan's been, well, things haven't been easy for her. She works so hard at that marketing firm, but they just don't appreciate her. Not like your success. The way she said, success, made it sound like a communicable disease. As if my 80-hour work weeks, my innovative code, and the livelihoods of the 30 people I employed were just some frivolous hobby that had gotten out of hand. I'm sure, I said. She's really hoping you two can finally put all that silliness behind you. That money thing, it was so long ago. You've obviously done fine for yourself, so it all worked out, didn't it? Holding a grudge is so unbecoming. My fingers tightened on the letter opener. Silliness, that money thing. The $15,000 that represented 2 years of my life. The theft that had forced me to live on credit cards and ramen for the first year of my startup, sleeping on a cot in my rented cubicle. I'm not coming to relitigate the past, Mother, I said, my voice dropping a degree. I'm coming to wish my grandmother a happy birthday. I will be polite, I will give her my gift, and then I will leave. Please manage your expectations. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. Manage my... Rebecca, you are still the most selfish person I know. After all we did for you. What did you do for me? The question was out before I could stop it, quiet and cold. What did you do, except tell me my ideas were foolish? What did you do, except enable your other daughter to steal from me? What did you do, except tell me to get over it when my future was ripped out from under me? Silence. She hadn't expected this. She had expected the old Becca, the one who would stammer, apologize, and absorb the guilt just to keep the peace. I have a meeting, Mother, I said, reclaiming my composure. I will see you on Saturday. I hung up before she could reply. My hands were shaking, not with fear, but with a cold, clear rage. For a moment, I was terrified. What was I doing? Walking back into the fire I had barely escaped. I stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. The city hummed below, a complex, logical system of inputs and outputs. I understood this. I could control this. My family, they were chaos. They were illogical, emotional malware. But my mother's words had solidified my decision. She works so hard. Things haven't been easy for her. They were already building the narrative. Megan, the struggling martyr. Me, the cold, successful dragon hoarding my gold. They were preparing for an attack. They saw my arrival as a concession, a sign that I was crawling back, ready to be folded into their toxic dynamic once more. They thought I was coming to apologize. I turned back to my desk and looked at the icon for the contingency file. They were about to be so very wrong. I had spent 3 years building a life they couldn't touch, a career they couldn't understand, and a spine they couldn't break. I was no longer the girl they could push around. I was the woman who built firewalls. I thought about Megan's smug face, her casual dismissal of my pain. I thought about my parents' weak-willed enabling. And then I thought the same thing I'd been thinking for 3 years, the one little fact that had kept me going in the darkest hours. The one detail that had made my betrayal so much more painful, but my eventual escape so much more complete. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. They thought they knew me. They thought I was just Becca, the emotional, artsy dreamer. They had completely and totally forgotten what I actually did for a living, even back then. I wasn't just a coder, I was a data specialist. And I had kept all the receipts. To understand Megan, you have to understand the ecosystem in which we were raised. Our family wasn't just a family, it was a carefully constructed narrative, and my mother was the head writer. In this story, Megan, 3 years my senior, was the golden child. She was beautiful, effortlessly popular, and charming. Her path was the right path. Cheerleading, a state college, a marketing degree, and a quick engagement to a respectable and boring guy she'd eventually drop. She was the protagonist. I was the problem child. I was quiet, I was nerdy. I didn't just like computers, I understood them. While Megan was at football games, I was in my room, teaching myself C++ and taking apart old hard drives. This was, in my mother's eyes, deeply weird. It was antisocial. It wasn't what a normal girl did. My parents, Robert and Cynthia, were passive enablers of this dynamic. My father worked a middling management job and found his peace in a recliner and a baseball game. My mother managed the home and, by extension, the family's social standing. Megan's successes were her successes. My eccentricities were her failures. The sacrifices were subtle at first. Megan needed a new car for her image. At school, I was told to take the bus. Megan's spring break trip to Cancun was an important networking opportunity. My request for a coding boot camp was a waste of money. I learned early to fund my own passions. I started a side hustle in high school, repairing computers for small businesses. I saved. I was meticulous. That saving habit continued through college and into my 20s. While I worked a soul-crushing data entry job, I was moonlighting as a freelance security analyst, building my reputation and my nest egg. That $15,000 wasn't just money, it was my escape pod. It was the seed money for Aegis Security. It was my life. Megan, meanwhile, floated. She got a marketing job at a mid-level insurance company. She was good at the people part of it, the lunches, the office politics, but she produced very little. She lived in a trendy apartment she couldn't afford, drove a car her paycheck couldn't support, and was always in some kind of minor financial crisis. And I, Becca, the family ATM, was always expected to help. "Your sister just needs $500 for a car repair," my mother would say. "You're so good with money, dear, you won't even miss it." "Becca, Meg's rent is late, just cover her this once, she'll pay you back." She never did. But the $15,000 was different. That was the line. I had kept it in a separate, high-yield savings account. I had told no one about it except my parents, in a moment of naive excitement, showing them my business plan. "This is it," I'd said. "This is the seed money for my company." My mother had smiled thinly. "Well, that's ambitious, dear." 2 weeks later, the money was gone. The primary antagonist in my life wasn't just Megan. It was the system my mother had built, with Megan as its willing star. But Megan was the one who truly enjoyed the role. She wasn't just thoughtless, she was casually cruel. She'd mock my nerd conventions, industry conferences. She'd borrow my clothes and accidentally ruin them, but her real specialty was undermining my confidence. "Oh, Becca," she'd said once, looking over my shoulder at a complex line of code. "Are you still playing with your little computer games? It's so cute. Don't you ever want to get out and meet a real man?" And then there was the boyfriend, the bad investment. His name was Julian. He was, even to me, transparently fake. He was too handsome, his suits were too shiny, and his job was in international finance, a profession so vague it meant nothing. He flashed money, but his watch was a knockoff. I'd spotted it in 5 seconds. Megan was obsessed with him. She saw him as her ticket to the life she felt she deserved. "He's an investor, Becca," she'd gushed, oblivious. "He's brilliant. He's looking at properties in Dubai." I had tried to warn her. Gently. "Megan, his pitch sounds a lot like a classic pyramid scheme. The returns he's promising are mathematically impossible." She had turned on me, her eyes flashing with a vitriol that stunned me. "Just because you have no ambition and no one will ever look at you, don't you dare try to ruin this for me. You're just jealous. You're a jealous, dried-up little loser." A loser. That was the last thing she'd called me before she'd pivoted, sweet as pie, to our parents to complain about how I was attacking her. A month later, Julian got into trouble. He needed money, fast, and Megan, desperate to save her fantasy, knew exactly where to find it. She knew my password. My mother, it turned out, had given it to her. In case of emergencies. The theft was bad, the cover-up was worse. The united front of my family, telling me to get over it, was the final, killing blow. They hadn't just stolen my money. They had stolen my past, my present, and my future. They had confirmed, in the most brutal way possible, that I did not matter. As I sat in my office, 3 years later, staring at the contingency file, I realized my mother was right about one thing. It wasn't just silly. It was war, and I was the only one who had come armed. The turning point wasn't just walking out the door. The real turning point had happened 3 hours before I left. It was the moment I, the data specialist, took over from Becca, the shattered daughter. When I first saw the $0 balance, I didn't panic. I investigated. I went to our shared family computer, the one in the den. Megan had been sloppy. She de-used it to make the transfer, probably assuming I'd call the bank, cry, and then confront her. She hadn't counted on me pulling the router logs. I saw the exact time of the transfer. I saw the IP address. I saw the destination account. Then I went deeper. Megan had stayed logged into her email. It was a rookie mistake, one that spoke to her supreme arrogance. She didn't think I had the skills or the nerve. I didn't just find one email. I found the entire thread. It wasn't just a bad investment. It wasn't just a boyfriend's debt. Julian was a professional con artist, and the emails proved unequivocally that Megan knew. She hadn't been duped. She had been an accomplice. "Jay, the $15K from your sister is a good start, babe, but it's not enough. When are you going to get her to invest in the Dubai project full-in?" "I'm working on it. She's so paranoid, she keeps all her real money locked up. This $15K was just in her savings. She's so stupid. I told her it was for my car repairs." Wait, that wasn't right. I reread the email. I told her it was for my car repairs. She hadn't just stolen the money. She had tried to get my permission first, using a lie. When I told her no, I vaguely remembered her asking for a loan and me, for once, holding firm, she had simply taken it. But the thread continued, and it got darker. "Jay, you need to push her. Tell her it's a 300% return. Tell her it's a sure thing. We need a real buy-in. Get her to liquidate those stocks her grandmother left her." I'm trying. She's coming over for dinner on Sunday. I'll talk to her again. I'll get Mom to help. Mom will make her do it." My blood had run cold. They weren't just covering a debt. They were actively trying to pull me into their scam. The $15,000 theft wasn't the end goal. It was the buy-in. It was Megan proving to her con artist boyfriend that she could deliver me, the family whale. I had systematically, calmly, downloaded every single email. I exported the router logs. I took screenshots of the bank transfer, complete with the digital signature. I bundled it all, encrypted it, and uploaded it to a private, secure cloud server. Then I confronted them. When they all ganged up on me, telling me it was just money and that I was dramatic, I realized the most horrifying truth of all. My parents didn't even know the half of it. They thought they were just covering for Megan's bad investment. They had no idea their golden child was a willing participant in a criminal fraud. And in that moment, I made a choice. I could have exposed her right then. I could have destroyed her in that living room. But I looked at my mother and father, their faces set in stubborn, ignorant defense of their perfect daughter, and I felt nothing, just pity and disgust. They weren't worth the evidence. They weren't worth the fight. So I left. I took my evidence, my laptop, and my broken heart, and I walked away. I never filed a police report. I never told a soul. I just disappeared. The contingency file was my insurance, my clever trap. It was the lever I hoped I'd never have to pull. Now, 3 years later, in my quiet, sterile office, I reviewed the file. The emails were just as damning. The bank records just as clear. My hands were steady. My resolve was firm. I wasn't the 29-year-old girl reeling from betrayal. I was the 32-year-old CEO preparing for a hostile takeover. I had no intention of using this. My plan was still the same: get in, see my grandmother get out, be polite, be distant, be gone. But Megan, I knew Megan. Her jealousy, which I'd seen simmering in my mother's texts and online, was a powerful, unstable force. She had stalked my company's success online. She had seen the Tech Forward article. She was not going to let me walk into her territory, the family home, and be the winner. She would try to humiliate me. She would try to paint me as the villain. She would try to expose me. I smiled, a thin, cold smile. I attached the encrypted files to a draft in my email. I set up a one-touch macro on my phone that would forward that draft to every single person on the party's Evite list, a list I'd found on Grandma Iris's social media page. The local pastor, my aunts and uncles, my parents' neighbors. Everyone. I wouldn't need to use it, I was sure of it. But as I shut my laptop, I repeated the old mantra of my profession: trust, but verify. And as I headed to my car, I thought, but they had forgotten one crucial thing. I don't just build firewalls, I specialize in counterintelligence. The drive to my parents' town felt like moving backward in time. The highways widened, the buildings shrank, and the air grew thick with memories. I didn't drive my Tesla. I took a high-end rental. I didn't want to give them any ammunition. I wore a simple, elegant navy blue dress. Expensive, but understated. Professional, my armor. The party was in full swing. The backyard was filled with people I hadn't seen in years, aunts, uncles, old neighbors. They looked at me as I walked through the gate, their smiles tight, their eyes flickering with curiosity. I was the ghost at the feast. I spotted Grandma Iris holding court by the roses. Her face lit up when she saw me, a genuine, uncomplicated joy that made my chest ache. "Rebecca," she cried, holding out her arms. I hugged her tightly, breathing in her familiar scent of lavender and powder. "You came, you really came." "I wouldn't miss it, Grandma," I whispered. "Happy birthday." I handed her my gift, a beautifully bound first edition of her favorite book of poetry. "Oh, she smiled, her eyes tearing up. "You always knew." The moment was warm, perfect, and of course it couldn't last. "Well, look who it is." Megan's voice, sharp and saccharine, cut through the air. She was standing behind my grandmother, a glass of champagne in her hand. She looked the same. Her hair was perfectly blonde, her dress a size too tight, her smile a painted-on grimace. But there were new lines of stress around her eyes and mouth. The golden child was starting to tarnish. "Hello, Megan," I said calmly. "Rebecca, we weren't sure you'd actually show," she said, loud enough for the people around us to hear. "I mean, with your big, important company, we're all so impressed." "I'm here for Grandma," I said, not taking the bait. Right, for Grandma," she laughed, a brittle sound. "Or maybe you just wanted to come back and, what's the word, gloat." My mother and father materialized at her side, a matched set of worried expressions. "Megan, stop," my father muttered. What, Dad? We're all thinking it. Megan took a step closer to me. It's just amazing how you managed all this. Little Becca, who couldn't even balance a checkbook, suddenly a tech genius. It's a real mystery. This was it, the first volley. There's no mystery, Megan, I said, my voice quiet. It's called hard work, you should try it sometime. A few people gasped. Megan's face flushed a deep, ugly red. Hard work, she spat, or just lucky. I mean, you must have had some help. You certainly didn't have any money when you left. Oh, wait. She tapped her chin, a pantomime of deep thought. That's right. You did have money. That little nest egg you were always hoarding. I kept my eyes locked on hers. Yes, I did. The money you accused me of stealing, she said, her voice rising to a theatrical pitch. The money you tore this family apart over. You're pathetic, Rebecca, living in the past, holding a grudge over a few $1,000s when you're clearly loaded. She was trying to paint me as petty, as the cold, rich sister who couldn't forgive a small, long-ago mistake. This was the confrontation. This was the trap, and she had walked right into it. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't get angry. I just looked at her with a profound, cold pity. A few $1,000s, I repeated, letting the words hang in the air. It was $15,000, Megan, to be precise. She scoffed. Oh, please, you probably make that in an hour. And do you remember what you told me it was for? I asked, my voice still conversational. She hesitated, her bravado faltering. It was a long time ago. It was a mistake. I was helping a friend. A friend, I said. That's interesting, because I remember you telling me it was for car repairs. And I remember you telling Dad it was for rent. And I remember you telling Mom it was a bad investment. Your story changes a lot. She turned pale. I don't know what you're talking about. You don't. I took a small step closer. The little circle of family around us was dead silent. You were always so careless, Megan, especially with technology. You thought I was just the weird girl who liked computer games. You forgo. What I was studying. You forgot what I was good at. Her eyes widened, a flicker of genuine panic. I'm not living in the past, Megan, I said, my voice dropping. The past is just data, and I have all of it. I have the bank transfer, I have the router logs, and I have the emails. Her champagne glass trembled. What emails? The emails, I said, between you and Julian. The ones where you call me stupid. The ones where you talk about how you're going to work on me at Sunday dinner. The ones where you're not just helping a friend, but actively participating in a criminal fraud. The color drained from her face. My mother let out a small, strangled sound. You're lying, Megan whispered, but there was no conviction in it. Am I? I held her gaze. You didn't just make a mistake, Megan. You didn't just borrow money. You knowingly, and with malice, stole my entire future to impress a con artist. And the only reason you're not in prison is because I chose not to put you there. I let the truth land. I let it saturate the air around us. Megan's immediate reaction wasn't remorse. It was rage. Her mask of golden child perfection shattered, revealing the ugly, desperate person beneath. You witch, she shrieked, her voice cracking. You came here to ruin this, to ruin Grandma's party. She lunged at me, her hand raised. My father caught her arm mid-swing. Megan, stop. My God, what is wrong with you? But the damage was done. The sound of her shriek, the word witch, had silenced the entire backyard. Dozens of faces were now turned toward us. Megan, realizing she had an audience, pivoted. Her rage collapsed into theatrical tears. She's lying, she sobbed, turning to our mother. Mom, tell her she's lying. She's making it all up to hurt me. My mother, Cynthia, rushed to her side, pulling her into a hug and glaring at me over Megan's shoulder. Rebecca, how could you? On your grandmother's birthday, you come here after 3 years and you attack your sister. I simply stated the facts, I said, my voice carrying in the silence. She's the one who brought it up. She was desperate, my father pleaded, his face ashen. That man, Julian, he had her convinced. She was a victim, too. This was it, the moment of truth, the last line of defense for them. They were still struggling, still trying to protect the narrative. They still believed Megan was just a fool, not a predator. They still believed she was the victim. A victim? I asked, my voice dangerously soft. Is that what she told you, that she was just a victim? I looked at Megan, who was hiding her face in my mother's shoulder, her sobs shaking her body. She wasn't a victim, Dad, I said. She was a co-conspirator. Julian wasn't just her con artist. She was trying to make him my con artist, too. I pulled out my phone. Rebecca, no, my mother whispered, her eyes wide with fear. Don't, this is family. This isn't family, I said, my voice hard as steel. This is a crime scene, and I'm done being the victim. I didn't have to use the email macro. I had the files right here. You're right, Dad, I said. Megan was desperate, but not for the reasons you think. I opened my email and pulled up the first file. This is an email from Megan to Julian, dated 3 days before she stole my money. I turned the screen toward my father. He squinted, reading it. His face went from pale to gray. I read the key line aloud for everyone to hear. Megan wrote, "He's a known fraud, Julian. I looked him up. If we get caught, I could go to jail. We have to be smarter." The backyard was so quiet, I could hear the ice melting in people's drinks. She knew, my father whispered, staring at Megan's hidden face. She knew he was a criminal. She knew, I confirmed. She knew and she didn't care, but it gets worse. I swiped to the next email. This one is from Julian after the theft. I read it aloud. The $15K is a good start, babe, but it's not enough. When are you going to get her to invest in the Dubai project full-in? Get her to liquidate those stocks her grandmother left her. A collective gasp went up. Grandma Iris, who had been watching in stunned, heartbroken silence, put a hand to her chest. The stocks she was referring to were the ones she had left me. And finally, I said, my voice ringing with a final, cold clarity, Megan's reply. I read the last line, the one that had haunted me for 3 years. "I'm trying. She's coming over for dinner on Sunday. I'll get Mom to help. Mom will make her do it." All eyes snapped to my mother. Cynthia looked like she had been struck. No, I didn't. She just said you were being selfish with your money, she said. She said it was an amazing opportunity. And you believed her, I finished for her. You were so eager to believe that I was the selfish one, and she was the star, that you were willing to make me do it. You were willing to help her pressure me into handing over my entire inheritance to a man she knew was a con artist. I looked back at Megan. She had stopped sobbing. She was just, still, trapped. "You didn't just steal from me, Megan," I said. "You tried to sell me. You tried to serve me up to your predator boyfriend to save your own skin. You were going to let him ruin me, and you were going to use our own mother to help you do it." I put my phone back in my purse. "That," I said, "is the truth of the money thing. That is why I left, and that is why I am never, ever coming back." I turned to my grandmother. "I'm so sorry, Grandma. I love you. Happy birthday." I began to walk away. "Wait." It was Megan's voice, but it wasn't a shriek. It wasn't a sob. It was a hoarse, broken command. I turned back. The entire party was frozen, watching us. This was the climax. This was the moment I had dreaded and on some level prepared for, the public showdown. Megan had pushed herself away from our mother. Her face was a ruin. Makeup was streaked, her eyes were wild. The golden child was gone. All that was left was the raw, toxic core. "So that's it," she sneered, her voice trembling with a new, venomous energy. "You just win. You walk in here with your fancy dress and your smug face, and you destroy me and you just win." "This isn't a game, Megan," I said. "It's always been a game," she screamed. "And you always had to be the smart one, the special one, while I had to be the pretty one, the popular one. Do you have any idea how much work that is? The pressure." I stared at her, dumbfounded. This was her defense. "You got to hide in your room with your computer games," she continued, stalking toward me. I had to smile until my face hurt, I had to laugh at stupid jokes, I had to date idiots, I had to be perfect. And you just got to be smart. And you loved it. You loved looking down on me. I never looked down on you, Megan, I said, though my voice was shaking now. I envied you. Everyone loved you. I just wanted to be left alone. Liar, she shrieked. You always thought you were better than us, and now you have this company, and you think you're a queen, you think you can just come back here and expose me. She was making a toast. Not a real toast, but a desperate, broken parody of one. She wasn't holding a glass, but her hands were raised as if she were. Here's to my sister, Rebecca, she shouted to the horrified crowd. The genius, the one who was too good for us, the one who ran away and made it big. She lunged for the 3-tiered birthday cake on the table. Before anyone could react, she grabbed a huge handful of frosting and icing. You want to expose me, she screamed, her face contorted. Let's see how smart you look now. She lunged, not to hit me, but to smear the cake all over my dress, my face, to humiliate me, to bring me down to her level. It was a final, pathetic, desperate act of sabotage. And it never landed. Grandma Iris, 85 years old and fragile as a bird, stepped between us. She didn't flinch. She just stood there, and Megan, in her blind rage, smashed the entire handful of cake and frosting directly into our grandmother's face. The world stopped. Megan froze, her hand still raised, covered in blue frosting. Grandma Iris stood perfectly still. The only sound was the drip, drip, drip of frosting falling from her chin onto the grass. Then, very slowly, my grandmother reached up, wiped a single line of frosting from her eye, and looked at her granddaughter. You, Grandma Iris said, her voice not trembling but resonating with a cold, clear, 85-year-old fury, are a monster. She didn't shout it, she stated it, like a fact, like a law of physics. That was the moment that shattered Megan. Not my evidence, not my words. It was the calm, definitive judgment from the one person whose love she thought was unconditional. Megan's hand dropped, her face crumpled. The rage, the hate, the jealousy, it all evaporated, leaving a vast, empty void. She looked at her frosting-covered hand, at her grandmother's ruined face, and she let out a sound I had never heard before. A wail. A sound of such profound self-loathing and utter defeat that it chilled me to the bone. She turned, stumbled, and ran. Not into the house, but out the gate, down the street, disappearing from view. The silence that followed Megan's exit was absolute. My mother and father stood frozen, twin statues of shame and disbelief. My mother looked at my father. My father looked at the ground. Neither of them looked at me. Grandma Iris calmly took a napkin from the table and began to wipe her face. Well, she said, her voice remarkably steady, that's quite enough excitement for one day. A few guests, horrified, began to stammer apologies and make for the gate. So sorry, Iris. We should be going. Our best to you. My mother finally snapped into motion, but not toward me. She went into hostess mode, a frantic, brittle energy. Oh no, please, don't go. There's more food. Robert, get the things. She broke down, her hands fluttering helplessly. My father just walked to the empty chair by the roses and sat down, putting his head in his hands. The family narrative hadn't just been challenged, it had been publicly executed. I walked over to my grandmother and gently took the napkin from her. I used a fresh one to clean a spot of frosting from her hair. I'm so sorry, Grandma, I whispered. I never wanted this. I just wanted her to stop. I know, child, she said, patting my hand. Her eyes were clear and full of a terrible, newfound understanding. I'm the one who's sorry. I knew they were hard on you. I knew my daughter-in-law favored. Favored? She couldn't say the name. But I never knew that. I never knew the truth. You've been carrying that alone all this time. It's okay now, Grandma, I said. No, she said, her voice firm. It's not, but it will be. She looked over at my parents, who were now just standing in the middle of their ruined party, utterly lost. They made their bed, Rebecca. You don't have to lie in it anymore. She hugged me hard. Go, she whispered. Go be happy, don't you look back, I will be fine, I have some phone calls to make. I looked at her, this tiny, frail woman who had just shown more strength than anyone in my family, ever. I nodded. I kissed her on the cheek. I love you, I'll call you next week. I'll be waiting for it, she said, giving me a real smile. I turned and walked away. I didn't look at my mother or my father. I didn't say goodbye. I walked through the gate, got into my rental car, and drove back to my life, the rear-view mirror empty. I got the fallout in bits and pieces over the next few weeks, mostly from Grandma Iris, who had, as promised, made some phone calls. The legal trouble for Megan was swift. It didn't come from me. But Grandma's phone calls had included one to a distant cousin who was a state prosecutor. Once he heard the name Julian, a different, much larger investigation snapped into place. It turned out Julian and his associates had scammed dozens of people. Megan, as a co-conspirator, was arrested. Faced with my evidence, which Grandma had calmly asked for and which I had calmly provided to the authorities, Megan took a plea deal. She got 3 years probation, a massive fine, and community service. She lost her job. She lost her apartment. My parents, in a last-ditch effort to save her, had drained their retirement account to pay her legal fees and the fine. They were socially ruined. The golden child was a convicted felon. Their story was over. The last I heard, Megan was living back in her childhood bedroom, and my mother was refusing to leave the house. The day I got the news about the plea deal, I was in my office, closing the final loop on Project Sentinel. My company was going public in the next quarter. I was happy, I was busy, and I was, for the first time, completely free. I opened the contingency file on my server. The emails, the logs, the screenshots, the data that had been my insurance policy for 3 long years. My finger hovered over the delete key. There was no hesitation, no malice, no anger. Just peace. I hit the key. A prompt asked, "Are you sure you want to permanently delete these files?" I clicked yes. The fortress I had built was strong, but I didn't need to live inside it anymore. The walls were down, not because my family was fixed or because I had won, but because I had finally said my piece. I had presented the data, and the system had, at last, corrected itself. The truth had finally been processed. I turned to my window, looking out at the city that was my home. I was no longer the scapegoat. I wasn't even the survivor. I was just Rebecca, and that was, for the first time, more than enough.